we're moving now to assessment. So Professor Ajay, from the University of Delhi, it would be wonderful if we could invite you to talk to us first. And are you sharing your slides, or would you like us to share the
I can share. If you have given me the permission, I can share my screen.
I think you have permission, yeah.
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Dr. Linda, for giving me the opportunity to speak at this joint UK-India forum. And I'll briefly discuss the assessment for student success. And in this, I will be covering why assessment is important for the student, and not only for the student. Assessment is also important for the educators as well as the educational institutions. Then I'll briefly discuss the assessment policy adopted by Delhi University in regular mode as well as the distance mode. As DU is a dual mode university, we are running courses or the programs in regular mode as well as in the distance mode. And my college, that is School of Open Learning, is responsible for running the courses or the programs in distance mode. And all other colleges of Delhi University runs in regular mode. Can I move to the next slide? So we'll start with the various forms of assessment that are being used in these colleges of Delhi University. Please move on to the next slide. So assessment in colleges actually encompasses various methods, diverse methods. For example, exams, quizzes, assignments, and projects, presentation, lab work, or practicals, class participation, portfolios, and reflective journals. And this is not all possible options that we can have. There may be more than that. I have listed the most common things that are being used. And these are obviously helpful in evaluating student progress, learning outcomes, and overall competency, ultimately shaping the educational pathway and enhancing the academic experience both students and educators. Please, next slide. So why assessment is important for the students? The assessment or evaluation may result into the improved understanding of the students, because these assessment allow students to gauge their knowledge, and that leads to a deeper understanding of subject matter and identifying the areas that need improvement. It also helpful in creating self-awareness, because with regular evaluation, the students gain insight into their strengths and weaknesses, fostering self-awareness that encourages personal growth and academic development. It also results in the motivation, because when students see their marks or you can say the performance in terms of marks and achievements, and that motivates students to achieve more or set higher goals so that they can succeed in better way. Then it may also result into the skill development, because the different type of assessment that are being used, for example, we are having some case studies on which the students have to give their comments. So it develops critical thinking, problem solving, and they are able to manage the time. So these things actually prepare students for future academic and professional success. So type of assessment is also important, and different types of assessment may lead to the different type of skills. Next slide. So next thing, as I have said, that the assessment or the evaluation of student is important. Equally important is the assessment of educators or the teachers, you can say, and the educational institutions. When we talk about the educators, so educator assessment is required so that the educators can assess their strength area and the areas where the improvement is required. And this assessment may be through the feedback of the students. By analyzing those assessment outcomes, the instructor can adapt their methods so that they can meet the diverse requirement of the students. Then another advantage of assessment of educator is they can provide, they can actually modify their instructional planning, how to present a particular subject in front of the students, okay, so that it becomes more interesting or more engaging for the students. So the assessment of educator is equally important. Then we talk about the assessment of educational institute. So in India, there are accreditation bodies which actually assess the quality of education in the different educational institutes and provide accreditation to those institutes. So these methods actually compel the educational institute to maintain certain standards of education for the betterment or for the better education of the students. And this also helps in curriculum development because these accreditation required regular review of the curriculum. And this curriculum actually development is the iterative process. And this process is done through, you can say, the feedback of all these stakeholders, maybe from the students, maybe from the industry where students are going after completing their education. So these curriculum development type of things keeps our academic program relevant and effective for the learners. Next slide, please. So now I'll move to the assessment methodology in Delhi University. Actually, in 2022, the new education policy of India or the national education policy of India was adopted by Delhi University. A new curriculum framework was developed, and that was named as UGCF, that is Undergraduate Curriculum Framework. And this framework, the assessment part of this curriculum framework promotes comprehensive understanding of student evaluation, encourages consistent engagement through the continuous assessment, and facilitates fair grading with transparent marks distribution. So I'll explain all of these in later part of the presentation. Please, next slide. So this assessment in case of this UGCF consists of two parts. One is called internal and another is called final assessment. Final assessment is done using the physical exam as a normal regular mode, as the exams are conducted in the regular mode. Same mode is used for the distance as well as regular. And the second part is internal exam. And this exam is actually, internal exam is little bit different in case of distance mode as well as in the regular mode. And when we talk about the distance mode examination, distance mode internal assessment, we have a portal that is named as Pragyan. This is learning management system portal for our institute. And this Pragyan portal is used for performing the internal assessment. And through this portal, we can conduct assignments, projects and practical components can be handled through this portal, and continuous assessment is also handled through this portal. Please, next slide. So in UGCF, all UG courses are 4-year programs. Earlier, we were having only 3-year degree programs, but from 2022, all UG programs are 4-year programs, and it involves continuous and internal assessment as I have discussed. And in case of final examination, it is restriction for us that exam center can be only in Delhi. We can't have exam center outside Delhi. And the passing criteria that is required is student have to obtain minimum 40% mark for passing the examination. Please, next slide. So assessment pattern for the various courses in UG programs. Actually, each course in a program is assigned some credit. And then that credit is defined, again distributed into lectures, tutorial or practicals. Wherever tutorial is there, practical is not there. And wherever practical is there, tutorial is not there. And marks which are allocated to a particular course, it depends on the credit. If it is a 4-credit program, it will have different marks allocated to this. If it is a 2-credit program, it will have different marks allocated to that particular course. And duration of exam, theory exam, the final exam also depends on the credit allocated for theory part of the course. So this I'll explain in the later slides. Please, next slide. So this is the comprehensive table that is having all types of courses that we can have in a program. So as you can see, we are having either 4-credit courses or we are having 2-credit courses. But within 4-credit courses and within 2-credit courses, there are different distribution that is possible. And depending on that, we have different marks distribution for theory exam, for practical exam, continuous assessment, and internal assessment. So I'll take up all these possible cases in next slide. Please, next slide. So first option for 4-credit paper is if I am having 3 credit for lecture and 1 credit for tutorial. So what does it mean? Actually, we have decided at Delhi University that each credit will be allocated 40 marks. So if L is 3, so 40 into 3 is 120. So 120 marks will be dedicated to the theory part and 40 marks will be dedicated to the tutorial part. So in this case, end-term theory exam will be of 90 marks and internal assessment will be of 30 marks. So 1930 will become 120 and duration of theory exam will be 3 hours. Why 3 hours? Because 3 credits are given to the theory part of the credit. So this is how the complete division takes place. And the tutorial part that is a 1 credit, it will be 40 marks. And this tutorial marks are actually the continuous assessment that is assessed during the classes in case of regular, and in case of distance mode, we give them some project by submission of that project, or we take some MCQ based test. On the basis of that, this 40 marks are computed. So this grand total becomes 160 marks because it is a 4-credit. So for all 4-credit programs, the total marks will be 160. Then another option can be lecture 3, tutorial 0, and practical 1. So in this case, the theory part remain as it was in the previous case, but tutorial component is not there in this course, and 40 marks are dedicated for the practical part. And then these practical marks are also divided into 10 marks for continuous assessment. The continuous, how the students, whenever teacher is giving them some assignment, how the student is submitting those assignments. So 10 marks are for the continuous assessment, 20 marks for end-term practical exam, and 10 marks for Viva examination. So again, the total is 160. Please, next slide. So we can have only practical based exam also, like this lecture 0, T0, but practical component is 4 credit. So in this case, this is a complete practical course. And in this case, for 160 marks are dedicated to the practical exam. In this case, 40 marks are for continuous assessment, 80 marks for the final end-term exam, and 40 marks for Viva examination. So this is 004 credit. Then another combination is lecture is equal to 1, T is equal to 0, P is equal to 3. So in this case, practical marks will be 120 because it's a 3 credit, and it is divided into 30 marks for CA, 60 marks for final exam, and 30 marks for Viva examination. And again, theory part will be of 40 marks, in which 30 marks are end-term examination, and IA will be of 10 marks, and theory exam will be of 1 hour, only because it is a 1 credit is dedicated to the theory part. Please, next slide. So this is another combination, lecture 2, tutorial 0, and practical 2. So in this case, both parts are equal. 80 marks are divided into practical and theory. In case of theory, 60 marks final exam, 20 marks IA, and practical is 80 marks, 20 marks for continuous assessment, 40 marks for end-term examination, and 20 marks for Viva examination. And the grand total is 160 marks.
3 minutes remaining, AJ.
Yeah, please next slide. So then we are having 2 credit program. As I have said, only we have either 4 credit or 2 credit. So in case of 2 credit, there are 2-3 combinations are there, L1 and P1. There is no tutorial. So 40-40 each, 40 for practical, 40 for theory, and theory exam is of 1 hour. And then we can have 0-0-2, which means it is a practical based exam. So all 80 marks are dedicated to the practical part of the course, and this 80 marks are divided into 20 marks for CA, 40 marks for end term examination, 20 for Viva. Please next slide. So this is complete theory paper. So all 80 marks are dedicated to the theory part, 60 marks final exam, and 20 marks for IA, and duration of theory is 2 hours. Please next slide. So the tutorial component in that we have discussed, it is included objectively to encourage active engagement through diverse tutorial activities, objective assessment, ensure fair and consistent evaluation standards. Continuous assessment promotes ongoing learning and skill development. Next slide, please. So these are the various tutorial activity that we can have, on the basis of which the continuous evaluation takes place, continuous assessment takes place. So literature review, book review, group projects, some actually tutorial we conduct in the form in smaller group of students. So one-to-one interaction with the teacher is possible when teacher is interacting with a smaller group, and some kind of problem solving exercise can be given so that it can be assessed what students have learned in their theory classes. Please next slide. And the continuous assessment consists of like quizzes, assignment, projects. This is done during the session before the end term examination, and each component that we have discussed contributes to final marks. And attendance is also important component in case of regular mode, but in case of distance mode, attendance is not factored into the final assessment. But in case of regular mode, assessment ke bhi there are marks allocated for the attendance of the students, and these marks are included in the final marks given to the student. Please next slide. So all the components, weighted average combines all the assessment component effectively. Attendance contribute, as I have discussed, only for the students who are in regular mode, but in case of distance mode, there are no marks associated with the attendance. And as I have discussed, there is a transparency in grading, and which fosters students' confidence and trust in the system. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. I hope I am not exceeded the time assigned to me.
No, that's fine, Ajay. Thank you very much. That was fantastic. Really see how the University of Delhi is thinking so carefully about the different types of assessment, how they work together, and the validity of that whole assessment package, with a strong commitment to continuous assessment. Thank you very much for sharing that. That's really helpful. I'm going to pass over to Prof. Alan now, Alan Tait, Centre for the Online and Distance Education Fellow and Emeritus Professor from Open University UK. Alan, welcome. Would you like to share your slides, or would you like Matt?
Yes, please. I think Matt is going to organise that for me. So hello to colleagues in India as well as in the UK. I've had the pleasure of visiting both Indira Gandhi National Open University and the University of Delhi in the past, so it's very good to reconnect with colleagues as well as from India as well as in the UK. What I want to share with you is really being done on behalf of 3 of us who have been working for the last 5 years on evaluating the impact of, first of all, COVID and then AI on assessment in the University of London and its federated institutions. Those colleagues are firstly, as well as myself, Dr. Linda Amron Cooper, who you've met today, who is managing this webinar, and Professor Stylianos Hatzipanagos, who isn't with us. And the published work which we have been able to produce as a result of this research and development is given on the last slide. And if these slides are circulated, which I'm very happy for them to do, you'll be able to follow those up. where you want. So if you move to the next slide, Matt. Thank you. So just a quick bit of context about where we have come from in the University of London. So starting in 1858, yes, that date is correct. That's a remarkably long time ago. Working now in 190 or more countries, we've had the classic approach of assessment right up to 2020 of exam halls, pen and paper. And this has provided, first of all, opportunity to students all around the world. That's the most important thing to say about it. And certainly gold standard academic integrity and protection of academic standards. So it's been a gold standard system which has lasted for a very long time, right up until 2020, when everything changed. The COVID emergency in March 2020 suddenly challenged the University of London, I think to its core, I would say, as to how on earth we were going to organise assessment in this complex situation in a way that protected academic standards and protected student opportunity. And then if that wasn't enough, in March 2023, everything changed again with the advent of generative AI. And I'll go into in a moment into some of the challenges that is continuing to present to us and to the rest of the higher education sector in the UK and around the world. So we've worked for 5 years. We worked in evaluating the impact of COVID and AI on assessment. We've used quantitative data, we've used interviews with students, interviews with program directors and with management and with some commercial online platforms. And we've looked in particular at the student experience. So next slide, please. So these were some of the solutions and challenges. And what I've got to say today is as much about challenges as it is about solutions. So this is very much about questions as well as answers. First of all, exams moved to home for students during the COVID emergency, and they moved to do their assessment, their final summative assessment on laptops. It's fair to say that we and other institutions did have problems with academic integrity in the first year in particular, and that some professional bodies who are important for the University of London, as well as for some of our federated institutions, some professional bodies were unhappy with the solutions we found, which was the case for all universities in the sector. There was huge administrative complexity, and the professional colleagues in the University of London who managed that complexity deserved and got, I hope, a huge amount of recognition for the very difficult work they had to do. And in fact, they have just won a prize awarded by the British Council for their work in delivering assessment solutions in this difficult period. But administrative complexity, there was plenty of. But this was true not just for the University of London, but was true sector-wide. There was suddenly a huge adoption of online learning methods, and open universities in the UK and around the world noticed our colleagues getting very interested in online learning, as well as in the University of London. Huge sector-wide interest in online and distance learning. But I think most importantly of all, at least for the three of us, and for you to discuss perhaps, was that this whole dealing with all these emergencies, COVID and generative AI, led to reflection about what assessment is for and how we invent methods to deliver a new wider range of purposes to assessment, along with the classic purpose of judging student performance. Thank you, Matt. Next slide. So this, I think I'd say, identifies the heart of the challenge that we have been living through. First of all, we had to protect academic standards and institutional reputation. That can't be emphasized enough. Nothing worries university leaders more than any threat to a program's academic standards, because, of course, student recruitment would crash, a professional body recognition would be withdrawn. So that is an absolute given, that we have to protect academic standards and institutional reputation. And the COVID emergency and generative AI have presented challenges to both of those things. Secondly, we increasingly recognized, along with program directors who are telling us this, that assessment has to support student learning. It's not there just to judge their performance, although it is there to do that. It has to support them through their educational journey. And lastly, of course, we want assessment to support student completion and success. So I hope long gone are the days when one of our program director in another institution once said, we know our degree is very successful and of very good quality because most of our students fail. That is not an attitude, not a contemporary attitude. So those three challenges, but of course those challenges don't lie easily alongside each other. We have to protect academic standards as well as support student learning and as well as support student completion and success. Matt, thank you. Next slide. We came to ask some questions about balance. So no answers here, but questions. What is the right balance between module, program, and institutional assessment? I think it's true to say that in old days, assessment was mostly thought about just at the module or the course level. And of course, as one of our colleagues earlier spoke about, there are program dimensions to assessment, which can be very helpful to work through what are the range of learning outcomes in a program that we want students to achieve, not just module by module. But equally, there are institutional approaches to assessment, institutional policies, which also have to be taken into account and weigh in on how you design module and program assessments. There are professional bodies, certainly for the University of London's own programs. These are heavily involved with professional recognition, and that's true of some of our institutions within the Federation. And of course, as other colleagues, including Professor Ajay, have mentioned, there's national regulation, which plays an enormous part. So all those things have to be put into balance, and it's difficult to get that balance right. We also have to work out the balance between formative and summative assessment. And I think over the last 5 years, formative assessment as a support to student learning and a support to student success has got more recognition. So formative assessment, that is not awarding grades, but primarily designed to support student learning and progress. Very important. But a big question is how you do this at scale. This question of scale has come up several times today. Very difficult to do that at scale and at a distance, but I think it's a challenge that we have to accept and to engage with. So formative and summative, what sort of balance between formative and summative assessment should there be? As important as what sort of balance should there be between continuous assessment and final assessment? Continuous assessment, of course, supporting student progress, but also helping you with problems of academic assessment, challenges to academic assessment, where you're able to be absolutely sure that your student has done his or her assignment along the way, as well as in the final examination or assessment event. And then lastly, the challenges of the recent years have also brought questions in terms of learning outcomes as to what is the balance between skills and knowledge. So knowledge has been traditionally much more emphasized in higher education assessment programs, but skills are also increasingly important and recognized as important and have to be identified and assessed along the way, along with knowledge. So some questions to leave there for discussion about the balance between all those 4 dimensions of assessment. Next slide, please, Matt. And then along with the COVID emergency, we had in March 2023 the new challenge of generative AI, of which ChatGPT was the first and the best known version. But of course, in the last more than 2 years, there are many other AI engines which have become equally important. The first 2 or 3 months in the UK, at least, the initial reaction was, well, we must stop students using generative AI. That's the way to deal with this. But I think more intelligent approaches very quickly came to bear, which is that that's first of all impossible to do, so we should drop it because of that. But secondly, we want our students to leave our universities with the skills and understanding of generative AI, because they'll be using it in their professional lives, in their personal lives. It's going to be a part of our environment as much as the digital revolution has become part of our environment over the last 40 years. So, but this has been a major challenge. Next slide, please, Matt. And it's been a major challenge to academic integrity. When you run programs which are delivered in 190 countries, the range of cultural expectations about what academic integrity means are enormous. One of the things that came out to us, which I think we were a little surprised by, but I'm reassured by, from program directors, was that they wanted an outcome of this new challenge to be that trust was seen as a core value. So in other words, instead of saying, well, the way of dealing with ChatGPT is to adopt a policing approach only, We want to actually to have a culture of trust, to build trust with our students as a core value of engaging with ChatGPT, because we all have to engage with ChatGPT and other generative AI programs. So trust is seen as a core value. How do we build that in is a core question. We have to include generative AI, not include it. And we have to work out a range of core practices to support academic integrity. So we didn't come up with all the answers as to how that was done in our work, but we think that is a challenge which faces the sector, and it'll be very interesting to see in discussion, Linda, what other ideas colleagues have around the world as to what those core practices should be. Next slide, Matt. So our major findings out of our work has been that there have been problems with misconduct arising post-COVID in the field of assessment, and that while detection is essential, it is not enough. It's not an adequate response. And that's been, there's been quite a fork in the path with some people who don't accept that, who do think that detection is the primary and only responsibility. But we were getting from students and from academics, and indeed from professional colleagues in the universities, that detection isn't enough, that there has to be a redesign activity for assessment. And I think that's the most important finding, which I would want to share on behalf of Linda and Stylianos, which is that we need to understand what's happening with assessment. We need awareness. We need support for students and for academics in how we go forward. And we need to redesign assessment, redesign it to meet these challenges. So again, that's very much for discussion, but our conclusion is that detection is not enough. Essential though it is, we have to redesign assessment. In some ways from the beginning, we have to go back to the beginning and work out why we assess students, how we assess students, and how we assure academic integrity at the same time. Next slide, please, Matt. So AI has been a major disruption. It reshapes the norms of authorship. When we say, this is my work, and I can assure you of that, what exactly do we mean today? Well, of course, we've always had the difficult issue of using sources. We all stand on the shoulders of those who've gone before us, and we all learn to use other people's work in ways that acknowledge that, and we use it honestly. We've always had the problem of plagiarism for those who don't understand those rules, or for those, that even smaller minority, who deliberately disobey those rules. But generative AI asks very challenging questions as to what is authorship, what is my work. And that debate is by no means over. That's ongoing and challenging, but it has to be one we have to engage with. And assessment has to adapt to acknowledge those challenges to the norms of authorship. And accompanying that is the question of AI literacy. So literacy about AI is now as important as digital literacy and other literacies are in our field. And it's as important, I have to share with you, colleagues, for those of us who work in higher education, as well as those of us who study. So it's a big, big challenge, this. Thank you. Next slide, Matt. And another way to put this is, this challenge is the difference between the assessment of learning and the importance of assessment for learning. Assessment of learning, of course, being the traditional stance that we are judging student performance, and assessment for learning, recognizing that as well as that, along with that, we have to support students in their learning with our assessment. Our assessment has to do that job as well. Difficult to do. Matt, next slide, please. So these are some of the approaches to assessment redesign, which we think come out of our investigations. Firstly, that it's very helpful to be able to invent authentic and real-world tasks for our assessment, because these much diminish the opportunities for generative AI to be used for those who, that small proportion of students who would want to use it to avoid doing the work themselves. Authentic real-world tasks embeds assessment in the professional or personal or community worlds of the students, and that can't be replicated so easily. I don't say it can't be replicated at all, but it can't be replicated so easily in assessment. Formative feedback is hugely helpful where we can organize it, because it allows us to know that the individual that we're dealing with is doing the work, because we recognize their style, their approach to work, but again, difficult to do that with large numbers of students. So that's a challenge for large-scale distance and online learning systems, but a challenge that AI could actually help us do. And lastly, we need to revisit assessment formats. To what extent can we engage with oral events in assessment, or project-based events, which must be based in the student's own context? But we do have challenges about scalability and sustainability and those new and revisited assessment formats. So
1 minute, Alan, please.
1 minute. Yes, I think I'm moving towards the end. Next slide, please, Matt. So these are the recommendations which come out of our work. First of all, we must partner with students to redesign assessment. We didn't find enough evidence that institutions were talking to students about how to work in the future. In other words, we were talking about assessment, doing this revision for students, but not with students. We do need to redesign assessment, but we need to have students help us do that. We need to provide student support in meeting the challenges of, in particular, of generative AI. Students or the great majority of students are using GPT or other engines in the UK. I think there's something like 80% of students who are already using it. So we have to help them to use it well. And we equally have to invest in staff development to help our academic and professional colleagues use generative AI in fruitful ways for the future. And lastly, we found that institutional policies were not keeping up with generative AI at all. So, and that's essential because we have to have a policy framework for our assessment. And so that's an urgent task which universities need to do, is to update their policies. Matt. So just to finish, those are most of the published work which the three of us have been able to produce so far. And if those slides are circulated, Linda, colleagues can follow those up and get in more detail some of the evidence that I've been putting before you all. So there you are. I hope I'm finishing on time, Linda. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you both for a really, really in-depth and very useful conversation about assessment for our online distance learning students. Drawing on two, I think, institutional perspectives and illustrating the way in which assessment can be a challenge, but also some of the recommendations and the solutions to those. So I'd like to open up for questions. If colleagues have questions, you can add them to the Q&A or add them to the chat. And I'm going to ask my two panelists, if I may. Lizzie has put it as an open question to the group, and it's going to challenge all of us. Has anyone nailed the more student-specific, timely, formative feedback, where you've got the relationship between peer and peer or between tutor and learner at scale? So managing timely, formative feedback, and certainly for the University of London, timeliness is one of the issues on modules where we might have 4,000 students. Then kind of managing that feedback coming back and going through the cycles of, perhaps second marking, etc., even for formative can be a challenge. So opening up to Ajay and Alan in terms of timely formative feedback. Ajay, did you want to start with that?
On Lizzie Holden question?
Yes.
Actually, we have not done this type of this kind of or this at this scale. We don't have any data on the student and tutor learner relationship on this particular grade scale. We have not conducted this type of feedback in our institute.
Okay, no problem. Alan, any thoughts on that sort of approach to?
Well, I think I'd say two things, Linda. One, I don't believe, but I could be proved wrong, I don't believe there are large-scale solutions to the question that's just been put. I genuinely think we are in the middle of a revolution in assessment, and so the answers have got to come. But the second thing I'd say is that I don't see any absolute impediment to doing what has been suggested is important. It's a matter of moving resources around. And that is always painful because in a resource constrained environment, which universities are certainly in the UK, to take resources from a place and put them in another place is a very challenging task, very challenging indeed. But I think you'd have to move resources to provide that sort of support to students with timely formative assessment. But I think it's important, and I think you'd have to, and you can't do it in an abstract way. You've got to do it program by program, and every solution is going to be slightly different from other solutions. I think that's all I could say at this time.
I mean, certainly at UOL, we've got a few little experiments with AI chatbots that are trained to be quite specific to particular modules or sets of content, closed system, where they're providing feedback to students on particular scenarios. So it might be a teaching scenario, for example, on our PG Cert Learning and Teaching and Higher Education, where the chatbot is actually kind of engaging. Matt, are you able to say anything about that? Because I think you're involved in that project, aren't you? I'm just putting you on the spot, Matt.
So just coming in. Yeah, I mean, I think the project is very much trying to offer a different way for students to sort of get feedback, to engage with with an AI sort of chatbot, but one that's got human input into it. So we're sort of framing the questions, we're framing the answers so that they're not just sort of randomized answers. There is some specific sort of human input into it. And I think that's where the key in that particular project is, that we're trying to keep the human element whilst making use of AI. And I think one of the things that is potentially coming through on that is that sometimes the students actually prefer that method because they feel uncomfortable sometimes dealing with their peers in those sort of circumstances. So actually, by bringing in the AI element, they feel more comfortable actually engaging with that process than they would if it was just sort of peer-to-peer kind of discussions and feedback. So that's early investigation at the moment. That may not prove the case in the long run, but that seems to be where that's going at the moment.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it, Matt? I mean, it does go back to what Norbert was talking about earlier in terms of, you know, does engaging with AI reduce the cognitive growth and metacognition for our students? And I think the tool that you're involved with utilising is being specifically designed to drive cognitive engagement, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'm delighted to say that there will be something in the code program of events where we'll be kind of showcasing this work coming up in the autumn. So I'll make sure that people know about that. But enough of University of London blowing its own trumpet. But I just wanted to pick up on that question of how we provide timely formative feedback, and indeed to some extent timely summative feedback as well. It's not just formative feedback that's the challenge. We've got a question about challenges and solutions for interdisciplinary courses and multidisciplinary courses. So how something like regional studies, Commonwealth studies type of program, how can assessment be designed effectively for that type of program? Alan, AJ, do you want to come in on thinking about interdisciplinary and potentially interprofessional as well as multidisciplinary?
I can't immediately, if I go first, AJ, if you're happy with that, I can't immediately see that interdisciplinary study would have specific challenges as opposed to single discipline or studies, unless there are different cultures in the academic teams who run them. Maybe that's what our colleague is getting at. But perhaps we could hear a little bit more about why that might be a particular challenge.
Yeah, that would be great, actually, if you could add some more to the chat about what the challenge is there for multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary courses. Yeah. AJ, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I also don't see any specific challenges to this type of subject because it can be treated as one course in a particular program. So like the challenges are there for all other program, all other courses of the program, the same challenges will be here and same solutions can be used here also. Unless until anything specific that is required, we can't comment on the challenges and the solution for this particular problem.
Thank you. Now, one of the things I wanted to, if I had the opportunity to explore with you, was the question of assessment burden. And I noticed, Ajay, I mean, you had a wonderful, an absolutely wonderful variety of assessment approaches that individual students for your 4 credit units have. And, you know, they're clearly well thought out balance between tutorial work, practical work, lecture work, exams, all sorts of different ways of engaging with the students. But looking at that from the student perspective, that's probably quite a lot to deal with. So there's a lot of assessment that they're having to respond to, and presumably there's a lot of marking or you know, or management as well, and administration attached with that. So is assessment burden something that you're thinking about, and have you got any thoughts on whether assessment burden is an issue?
No, we don't think the assessment is a burden for student as well as for the educators, because the continuous assessment is linked to the class. When we are going to the class, you are teaching them, you are interacting with them, normally you ask some questions, you give some assignments to them, and you try to evaluate. So actually there is no formal mechanism is there or any defined that you have to do for this type of assessment. It depends on the teacher. The continuous assessment is specifically dependent on the teacher, how teacher is want to assess the students. And it also depends on the type of course that teacher is teaching, because in different type of courses, the different type of assessment may be required. Maybe in some cases, the student have to give the presentation, and that can be marked as a part of the continuous assessment. And in that case, we have to just listen to those students and mark them. And in some cases, we have to give certain problems, and then student have to give the solution of those problems. Certain case studies are there. Sometimes I think it can be, actually it depends on the teacher. It can be quite a good learning experience for the students, and students can actively engage in the continuous assessment. They become serious when they think that this activity will give some contribution to my final assessment. So that thing become maybe interesting, and obviously I don't think this will become a burden. This can be engaging exercise for the teacher as well as the student.
Thank you. I think that's you've touched on something that I certainly know when I'm teaching with I've seen with my students that I've worked with, is that in a way, if it's not formally assessed, they aren't necessarily going to do it. So there's a lot of motivation around assessment, and that, you know, that drives student behaviors. And so I think it's really interesting the way that you're integrating that continuous assessment into the overall assessment work that the students are doing. Really helpful. Alan, did you have any comments on kind of assessment burden and some thoughts on?
Well, it's a very challenging question, I think. I mean, most of our students in distance and online learning are part-time students, and they are by definition time poor because they're balancing study with family responsibilities, with work responsibilities. They're difficult lives, our students, many of them. And so it takes you to that very difficult place of learning hours, which is, I think, notoriously challenging, partly because people learn at different paces, they take different amounts of time to do tasks. But I do think we have to have in mind the overall learning burden within which assessment takes its part. And that the second thing I'd say is that, of course, that brings you up to the question about module, program and institutional policies, because we all know academics can take very different views. Some academics might take the view that the more assessment I give my students, the more quality I'm giving my module, which can be very unfair to the student. So I think there has to be a policy dimension to this, which works across, which aligns modules, programs and institutions in a way that is helpful to manage that assessment burden. But I don't think we can ignore the assessment burden. If we're going to make assessment this more complex and supportive activity, then the assessment burden has to be taken into account.
Thanks, Alan. Yes, absolutely. I think that's, I mean, Margaret spoke earlier of the student on the run, which sort of really struck with me, because I absolutely feel that our students are on the run these days. I don't know if there was ever a time when they weren't on the run, but they certainly seem to be on the run. And so managing the experience, which includes the assessment, is so important. Now we've got some, Lizzie and Matt have been having a conversation about the AI tutor thing, so people may want to have a look at that. But Chandra Mohan has built on that question of multidisciplinary challenge. So multidisciplinarity challenge, relative emphasis on the specific subject included in the programme. So I think perhaps my first thought on that would be that thing of thinking of assessment, as you suggested, Alan, and I think you also alluded to, Ajay, was this idea of having an overview at the programme level of the way in which assessment is mapped. So it's not just starting with each module and thinking, how am I going to do the assessment? And as you say, lots of academics sometimes think the more they do, the better, but actually thinking about the whole picture of the programme. I don't know, Ajay or Alan, if you want to come back on that question of programmes that are interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary and managing that balance.
I don't think I have any greater wisdom. I think Chandra Mohan has probably got it as in focus as I can see at the moment. But clearly there are going to be challenges, methodological challenges across disciplines within an interdisciplinary program, and they would have to be taken into account. Yes, I can see that point.
Ajay, did you have anything else to add to that?
Actually, I'm not getting the question. It's clearly, there may be some challenge, but I'm not able to recognize that challenge at this moment.
No problem. Absolutely no problem. Swanjit has talked about having a standardized form of continuous assessment for different courses. Now, I think that's an interesting aspect, and I certainly at the University of London, there's always a call for standardization. You know, when you've got a lot of programs, a lot of students in a lot of countries, then standardization is a fabulous thing because it makes the management a bit easier. But does it make the learning experience or the learning outcomes easier? And you know, so my challenge to you, Alan and Ajay, is, does standardization of assessment across an institution or a department actually help with student outcomes or not? It's an essay question. You can't use ChatGPT, and it's a 5,000 word answer, please. So does standardization of assessment work across a whole department or a whole institution?
I'm happy to follow Ajay on this occasion.
I should speak first?
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, okay. Standardization in some form is always followed in all the institutions. As at Delhi University also, we are having the final exam that is standardized format for all the courses. They have to give, depending on the credit assigned to the theory part of the particular course, that is a standard that these questions will be there, a student have to answer. So standardization is there also. And this thing is also uniform. This thing is good also. I am not saying this is bad. But when we talk about the assessment done during the teaching hours, that assessment is, I think, difficult to standardize, because different courses may have different requirement, different teachers may have different approach to teach a particular subject. So if they are given the freedom, that should be done objectively. That I understand, because student must know in advance that how the teacher is going to assess these students. That should be there. But there should not be strict guidelines that for every course, the continuous assessment has to be done this way. I think this may not be suitable for all the courses, all the teachers, and all the students. So some kind of flexibility should be given to the teachers, because a particular subject is understood by a teacher well, and how that has to be communicated to the teacher and how evaluation has to be done, that can be left to the teachers. Otherwise, certain standard mechanisms are used in every way, every part of the world. You can have quizzes, you can have certain tests, you can have presentation, but some freedom can be given to the teacher for the continuous assessment. Otherwise, everywhere we are following these standards.
Thank you. Thanks, Ajay. Alan, any reflections on this question of standardization of assessment?
Well, I think Prof. Ajay has got the issue well in focus. And clearly some standardization is essential. Otherwise, you're going to have some students doing far more than others for the same qualification, just because it's in a different subject and a different academic takes a different approach. So there's got to be some standardization, but equally you've got to have innovation. And so there's always a battle going on in any institution at any time about the need for innovation, and that conflicts with standardization, and you have arguments which have to be resolved one way or another about how to go forward. So standardization is essential, but it's not everything.
Thank you. Okay, well, that brings us really nicely to the end of our assessment session, which I think has been excellent, actually, and really, really stimulating. Fantastic to see practice and then this overview that we've got here. I really noted in the dialogue and in the conversations the focus that has been placed on thinking carefully about assessment. What's it for? What's it supposed to do? And a strong emphasis on assessment for learning here, supporting our students to be more successful. So I think, you know, we have to congratulate everybody in this. And I think for online, open, distance, digitally led learning, that has to be part of the solution, because we are not having that personal interaction with our students in the same way as we might if they were coming into the building for sessions. If they're geographically distributed and digitally distributed, then supporting their learning through effective assessment is going to be very effective, very important. And of course, we've got the question of standards and recognition, and that's equally important. So been interesting to see that kind of balance playing out here. So that brings us really to the end of our inputs, and now we've got a little bit of a wrap-up session. But before we do that, Professors Alan and Ajay, we are clapping you, we are cheering you on for your contribution. Thank you very, 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 very much. So what I want to do in this last bit now is, we've got some claps coming up in the chat, which is brilliant. What I'd like to do is now, first of all, invite Mike Winter, OBE, who is the Director of International Affairs at the University of London, and who's been a key component in putting together this session. Mike, over to you, just to give a little bit of context and to talk about the colleagues who've been involved in bringing this together.
Yeah, thanks, Linda, and thank you very much, colleagues, all panelists, and indeed yourself, Linda, for chairing. It's been really, really stimulating. I just wanted to put this in a sort of slightly wider context, because these are incredibly pertinent and important themes that are being grappled with in India and in the UK and indeed elsewhere. And the impetus for this webinar, this forum rather, came from a round table that was organized by the British Council in Delhi. It took place in Delhi at the end of January this year. And I had the pleasure and the privilege of taking part in a round table and a seminar at the end of January in Delhi with colleagues who are here today, including Professor Uma from IGNOU and Dr. Parimala from Symbiosis, and indeed colleagues from Delhi who were there. And we want to see today's event very much in a continuum of ongoing and sustained engagement. I know that the British Council has put out a number of Going Global project funds, and indeed there is one that is going on between IGNOR and the Open University, our quality assurance agency, and indeed the NAAC in India. And there is an event tomorrow going on at which Linda is also speaking. So we want to be part of this ongoing discussion and this ongoing longer term engagement. And I hope that we can do that both through the Centre for Online and Distance Education at the university and colleagues around the sector in India, and the expertise and the insights that you represent. And whether that's through visiting scholars, we can provide information on that Code hosts visiting scholars from around the world for different periods at different times of the year. The events, which are both in London and indeed largely online, and the resources that the centre offers. And keep an eye on what the British Council is doing. So not only the Going Global project funding that comes around at different times of the year, there is the major Going Global conference happening at the end of October in London. So keep an eye on that as well, because I imagine that there will be sessions touching on the sorts of things that we've been talking about today. So I just wanted to put it in that sort of wider context and repeat my thanks to everyone involved. It's been really, really interesting and stimulating.
And thank you to you, Mike, for coordinating this with us, and of course to Matt for doing the technical side, and Christina managing the invitations and so on. But really good. It's brilliant to see the context of this, and I am very much looking forward to the event tomorrow and potential other events that are coming up. But what I want to ask the audience really is, our aim today was to identify key considerations. Let me remind myself of the word. Our aim today is to identify key considerations for effective approaches to accessible and inclusive online and distance education at scale. So I'd really appreciate us now collectively sharing some of the thoughts that we have. So what I've done is put a question in the chat, which I hope people might contribute to, and I'm asking really I'm asking for perhaps two inputs, but you may only have one. But what particularly struck you from the discussion today? What's the thing that you're kind of taking away as a key consideration in terms of effective approaches to accessible and inclusive online and distance education at scale? What's your takeaway? I think it would be really nice to share that with each other, because it might stimulate our thinking further. So I know it's the end of a big session, a long session, but I am asking you to type in your thoughts, please. Some really, really thoughtful inputs there. Some really, really interesting. Do take a moment just to flick through the thoughts there. You may see your takeaways being represented. I'm certainly seeing some themes about social engagement, human aspects as being really important. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. So I'd like to invite our panelists to please, if you wouldn't mind coming back on camera if you're able to. And what I'd like to invite out, I think we have 4 of our panel colleagues left with us. Prof. Uma and Prof. Ajay, I think you're still there. Fantastic. So thank you very much for being with us through this whole session, which has been it's been a long one. But can I invite each of you in turn just to share from your perspective one of the things that you've gained from today's session, if that would be okay. So what have you gained from today's experience of joining this discussion, and that you'd like to share with us, please? Who would like to start?
From Alan talk, I actually that one issue was reinforced. Actually, we are also facing the problem because of AI, but as Alan has said, that we can't neglect AI at this moment. We have to include that in such a way so that our curriculum or our assessment doesn't affect because of that, and how positively we can make use of that that AI for the better learning environment of the student. We have to actually keep changing our ways according to that, because it's true that AI has disrupted the assessment method. Okay, or we are going online when we are taking the online exams. Again, the trust issues are always there. But we have to adapt to the new changes because of this AI, and we have to see that how positively we can use AI for providing better learning environment for the students.
Thank you, Professor Ajay. Alan, did you want to come in next?
Yes, I was challenged by things that a number of our colleagues said this morning. And I think if I had money to put into research and development in universities, I think I would do it in the field of personalized learning. How in large-scale systems we can give students personal learning experiences which are meaningful for them, because I think that's very helpful to learning and to student success. And I think we should also not just look inside education for that. Many, many businesses are trying to find solutions in exactly the same way. There's no way back to walking in to institutions or organizations and getting the support you need from somebody who just happens to be sitting there waiting for you. Many, many organizations are facing similar problems that face education. Many of them are doing it really badly. But I'm sure we have things to learn about supporting individuals using our services across the piece. So if I had money to invest in research and development, that's where I think I would put it.
Thanks, Alan. Excellent. Dr. Paramilla, did you want to come in?
Sure. I think it's a wonderful experience to learn from the colleagues who are in the same space offering, programs and online distance learning. And it feels good to know that the challenges remain the same irrespective of from where we are offering the programs. The concerns and challenges remain the same. We also draw a lot of inspiration from our examples in India itself, from IGNOU or University of Delhi, in terms of the way that they operate at such scale. So they provide a lot of inspiration for a lot of other universities that are entering this space. Personally, this has been an excellent experience for me. I've got to know some of the best practices that other universities are implementing, and which we can easily take home and replicate it in our setting.
Thank you. Thank you. Well said. Professor Uma.
It was a wonderful experience, in fact. So what I mean, the most important thing is the student engagement that everyone has been talking about, and how do we do, and how in different contexts it is being handled. That's the most important thing. As AI is taking over, people are talking about it takes away the mundane job. But I think faculty, teachers are important. They will be there. And they are important because concerns are there, whether, with AI in place, and we talk about agents and all happening and doing, even taking away the assessment part. I think it is very important that we have the human touch. And when, especially in case where we talking about large scale operations, AI may help to some extent, but then human touch is very important. That needs to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. that human touch has come up all the way through today, hasn't it? Yeah, absolutely come through, and it's come through from what people are taking away as well. I'm so delighted. It's been a fantastic session. I really do hope that we'll be able to continue these dialogues and this engagement as we go forward, and really looking forward to having more conversations with colleagues. So thank you very much, everybody, for engaging, the audience, our excellent presenters, the administration and the technical support here, and thank you to the British Council for getting us going on this. It's been fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. Large, loud claps digitally.